Well, so he's been approved, and his job possibly the most difficult amongst all possibly the 600 or 60 ministers that we're going to see. Who am I talking about, Winston? The man on the screen.
In the big picture.
Dr. Kofi Agyei is our subject for Beyond the Numbers tonight. What are we looking at? We are looking at his position as a finance minister. What are the hurdles ahead in terms of revenue, mobilization, expenditure? We've seen, some ballooning expenditure line items in the projected data for 2025. And Winston is going to tell you more about that.
His seat was previously occupied by Ken Ofori-Atta, formerly also Mr. Tekpe, also sat on that same seat. We know Dr. Amin Adams also was the last one to sit on that seat. All of them had a major burden, that is to bring economic stability, ensure debt management, ensure prudent fiscal revenue collection. All those things were what that ministry became known for. He is in this hot seat. His plans, his project for the government is very critical. Everyone is looking at the finance ministry. When they talk about economic stability, the finance ministry's implementation of how much revenue will be collected, how much expenditure will be approved, becomes critical. So nothing happens without money, and he's the one in charge for that.
Yeah, definitely. He's not new to this office. He's been the deputy minister before in President Mohammed's first term. He was deputy to Sektekpe, and Sektekpe said, look, I am very proud of Dr. Kofi Agyei. He's trained him well. Now he is in that big chair, becoming the finance minister. And his boss is now the advisor to the president on issues around the economy. But tonight, we want to do something different, right? He is the man, just like you put it, to distribute the national cake. We are talking about resources or revenues of the country. He is the man going to decide that this should go to education, this should go to interior ministry, or this should go to energy. This is the man that we are looking at. But there is a big problem ahead, and the problem ahead has to do with the country's deficit, which over the years has actually run us into some of the most difficult decisions we had to take, including the debt restructuring. Now, when most people were saying that, Amin Adams should come to Parliament and come and present the first quarter budget, I was like, if you were paying attention, you will know that the country has already presented its budget in the third review of the IMF documents. Why? Because at the moment, this is a country that is under an IMF program. Definitely, when the IMF was doing the third review, they were looking at 2025 expenditure. So that document gives you a clear indication or picture of how 2025 will be. And tonight, that is what we are going to look at. The big figure he will face is this 209 billion Ghana cedis of revenue and grants, according to the IMF projection for 2025. This is the money he will be working with. Possible?
It's quite possible. However, there may be some challenges. If you look at the IMF third review, it tells you of the picture going into 2025. The only exit or access that government may have in this year is access to some capital due to the recent Fitch rating, giving Ghana some leeway into the international financial market. However, that may be limited, even though we just underwent some interesting Eurobond, which was quite successful. Already there are conditions which Ghana has to meet. Already we've seen some key macro and micro factors going our way. We've seen inflation looking quite subtle.
So stability.
Absolutely. The CD not too stable in this first week of the first part of the year. But there are plans many are looking forward to, and who the finance minister, especially the governor of the central bank, will be taking over from Dr. Ernest Addison. The government now is going to be looked for, especially based on its projected expenditure outcomes. How would they try to cut down expenditure in some key areas of the economy? So these and some of the factors that he intends to put in place will determine whether the government's outlook will look positive.
This is a cake that we will be baking ourselves in terms of revenue. Definitely, there will be other inflows from the IMF, the World Bank, and other development partners. But we as a country are expected to bake a national cake of 209 billion Ghana cedis. And that is what the finance minister should be looking at in terms of sharing. But when we were looking at the data from the IMF document,
yes,
something that shocked us or caught our attention, Winston, was the fact that if you add or if you put together 4 expenditure line items,
it will be more than the 209 billion. That is very interesting.
Very interesting, and that's the number that we're going to bring up very soon. That number is huge. So, Winston, you would have to help me bring that number up. I think
this is a very huge number.
Yeah, let it settle.
That's a big number. That's a big number.
It's not just some 254 million or 54 Ghana cedis.
This is just four. 254 billion
Ghana cedis.
We'll take you through the key financial expenditures elements that this constitute and what it means for the economy. We already know the plans of this government, the various policies that they intend to institutionalize their development in terms of capital expenditure. However, government has consistently hit on restructuring the fiscal framework of the nation. Yeah. Even yesterday, or possibly today, the finance minister met the staff of the finance ministry and relayed his plans to them, saying that he is going to work with the team. However, he's expecting consistency, he's expecting efficiency in management of public financial outcomes.
Now, our job is very simple, to tell, the stories behind the numbers.
Yes.
And I'm pretty sure that the President of the Republic, I'm talking about John Dramani Mahama, he has actually seen this data and maybe saying that, just 4 expenditure line items, and just like you said, we'll take you through, it's taking some, let's put the number that I think is 122% of the expected revenue in 2025 this year. 4 expenditure line items, 122%. And I'm pretty sure that the president looked at that data and, trying to analyze his speech today when in the Volta region, I think whole, right? Whole park, Jubilee Park. He said that he's aware of the fiscal constraint and that his government is going to be very innovative, right? Introduce some innovative ways of raising revenue. So, in fact, a 4 expenditure line item, definitely, which does not include some capex expenditure, is taking away 122% of the revenue you are supposed to gather. Then I understand why the president made mention of, BOTs, build, operate, and transfer, using of special purpose vehicles to bring in new revenue. And we know that when it comes to introducing special purpose vehicles, Tekpe was the mastermind behind, the introduction of ESLA, the sinking fund, and other revenue handles that stabilize the country a bit in terms of its fiscal position. But this is the picture. You were expected to raise 209 billion Ghana cedis, but 4 expenditure line items will cost 254 billion. Definitely, we are not even done, but you're in deficit.
Already, starting from a deficit
45
position.
45 billion Ghana cedis, Winston.
That gives a big picture going into the management of Ghana's economy. If he intends to go that direction, that means there's a lot of work for him to do. We already know that the IMF in its review made a statement that as at 2025, within 2025 alone, 25% of our revenue will be paying just interest on the domestic front.
Yeah, so that's more than 100 billion Ghana cedis.
Exactly. How much more the international Eurobond debt that will be servicing within the year? So it becomes quite critical how we manage our revenue. Just yesterday as well, the Chamber of Industry were also demanding that henceforth government should not give out contract without providing financing for them. And if you look at our debt stock, financing capital projects takes a key chunk. Therefore, even the trade minister, the Minister of Roads and Highways, was mentioning how much debt are being owed to just contractors. So all these elements are some of the means that siphons some of the expected revenue. We have not even spoken about intervention for the poor in our society. The building of schools, the senior high free SHS is a key policy the government intends to review and ensure continuity in that aspect. So all these fall under, even though revenues and grants over 209, and also cost of 4 expenditure item line up to 254 billion, all these starting from a deficit position doesn't give an advantage to the minister?
Well, I mean, how government spends mirrors the picture we see, especially in the banking sector.
Yes.
So the intelligence we have is that if you look at the non-performing loans of the banks, which has ballooned to more than 20%, 25%, majority of that is as a result of contractors who go to the banks to take loans and work for government and are not paid. Such arrears actually affects the outlook of our banking sector.
Absolutely.
So how government spends directly even affects how our banking system, looks like. Now, we go to the next slide. We've spoken about this big number, 122% of revenue. But we begin to now talk about the 4 expenditure line items. And the first one, very important, because if you don't deal with this proper, strikes, organized labor and co will come at your neck, right? Wages, salaries, and social contribution. In total, we call it compensation of employees. It's going to take 73.1 billion Ghana. That's the projection by the IMF that this is what you need this year to pay workers.
Things have to change. If we look at this number, 73.1 billion, there was times when they went to the single spine salary structure.
Yeah.
That came about ensuring there's equity, equality in salary payment and conditions of service. However, when we talk about nations like Singapore, when they realize the need for improved human resource development, they ensure that in their governance structure, they bring in the right technical know-how, people who understand how to manage their economy. So when you go to Singapore, their structure is built in a way that if you don't fit in, you must stand out. If you look at Ghana's structure, governance structure, the key amongst them are the service workers.
Yeah.
And civil servants are critical. Government go, government come. But these civil servants are consistently. You ask yourself how many training and retraining goes on.
If you are talking about civil servants, you have to be very careful,
We are being careful. We are not being careful because this is a national issue. And we have to let them understand that this is something that also involves us. Directly or indirectly, these funds are taxes of individuals or workers who labor day in and day out. Directly, you pay tax. Indirectly, you will definitely pay tax. However, we want to make sure that these wages, salaries, and social contributions made by workers in this nation are put to use. And this is amount for government to achieve that. Social equity, improvement in livelihoods, all these money for the workers, the condition of workers is very important. Because this 24-hour economy cannot be achieved by the government without making sure the labor and labor strikes and disputes are resolved. Possibly it may go high because workers, they can never say enough is enough.
That's why I am happy that President Mahama says he is going to scrap ex gratia, right? It means that that's going to reduce the burden that the Article 71 office holders put on the kitty of the country, right? Now the president has decided to, minimize the number of ministers you work with, the number of ministries from 30 to 23, working with just 60 ministers.
Yes.
And all of that is supposed to bring down budgets like these, right? So definitely, if the president is going to scrap ex gratia, I know it's not that blanket. There will be other details. I don't know if it will just be the political appointees, whether to extend to judges and all of that. They will give explanation. But we know that they have seen how ballooning this will become in 2025. That's why they decided that right from the onset, they are going to decrease the number of ministers, make some cuts, merge some of the ministries and all of that. It will be interesting to see how that will reduce this number.
Let's not forget, these are the real numbers. Don't forget there are ghost names as well in the payrolls that has to be reviewed. There has been consistent numbers. We hear the previous government come and announce over 70,000 ghost names removed. But how they reappear tells you that they are real ghosts. However, salary is being withdrawn every month. The Auditor General has to go. We have to go back to assess that particular angle, how much government is losing in terms of people who are paid for no work done. It's very essential.
Now, Winston, this is your number. And when we were having the pre-discussions, you were interested in this number, the debt servicing obligation for 2025. We have enjoyed moratorium for quite some time, but 2025 is a year that we'll start paying some of the debt. And so the big number?
It's a very huge number. Resurrecting from the help me. This is too huge.
Let's bring it.
So viewers, as you can see, it's a big number
Definitely in billions.
Very big, definitely in billions. Someone would say billions of Ghana cedis, of course. So 142 billion debt servicing for 2024. This is a responsibility on the hands, on the thigh of the finance minister. He is going to be handling the responsibility in terms of both the Eurobond domestic debt and various debt servicing that he will be handling. This would take a lot of fiscal adjustment. We've already benefited from the debt restructuring that happened. It gave us some relief.
Breathing space.
Exactly. However, one warning that was given to Ghana when I went through the recent Fitch rating tells us that it provided Ghana some kind of free time. So within this free time, what are we going to be doing? It gives us a good outlook in the international market that although we are in the place of default as a country, we still have an opportunity to play or have access to some financial leverages on the international market at a very reasonable interest rates, unlike when we used to have at a very high interest rate because we were very risky on international play. So yes, Ghana, we are not there yet. The burden is not lifted yet. A lot of debt servicing, over 29% of our debt in 2025 will be paid in debt servicing. In 2026, it's going to be 31%, and it will keep increasing because of our shifting of our date on how much we have to solve in terms of debt servicing. So the burden is not taken away, but Ghana still has more work to do.
Now, definitely when you talk about debt servicing, you have to talk about the capital markets.
Absolutely.
Because it was part of the reason why we always have big deficits. And Oforiatta did a good job by going to the Eurobond market, having road shows, and getting the fantastic $3 billion and all of that. But that brought us problems, right? In 2023, we started feeling it, we could not pay and all of that. But this will be the first finance minister to have the most shallow, or the shallowest, if there's any word like that, to have a very shallow capital market, right? Why do we say so? Because he will not have access to that big bond market, domestic bond market that we used to have. It's gone. Hitherto the Bank of Ghana would have come in to buy your bonds and all of that, but they are now doing 0% financing. So if you issue the bonds, who will buy them? Again, the Eurobonds that you used to go and get $3 billion to close your gap, now you do not have access to it. You are now fighting to get there again. So, in fact, if we want to be very real, Dr. Keisol Attoforsen, his best bet is a treasury bill market. And that market, just like his boss said in my documentary, A Nation That Begs, he says, that market, domestic market, is very shallow, right? If it's very shallow, then the question is, how does he close such a big gap? Of course, we know the IMF will come in, we know the World Bank will come in, but there's still big BOP deficit to even be funded. And in terms of the expenditure that we are talking about, this is the one that is the most variable. It changes, it's not constant. Why? Because there's an external element in there, external debt servicing, which is in dollars. It means that if we are not careful and the city starts to depreciate again, this number could go up. The amounts we used to settle the debt will go up because the IMF is estimating it's around 61 billion Ghana cedis for 2025. The biggest component will come from domestic space. But that $61 billion could go up if the city misbehaves. The question is, with such a shallow market, how is he going to fund it? Very interesting, right?
It would have been better if we had a very vibrant cocoa sector.
Yeah.
Already our cocoa sector is suffering. We know how much now in the international market, over 11,000 in terms of cost in the international market is being sold. But domestically, our farmers are not having the right condition to really meet our over 370,000 metric ton target for the next season. There are anticipation that rainfall patterns will affect the output. There are also anticipation projections that possibly the farmers may not be able to subvert some of the activities because of the interventions, or let's say how juicy galamsey have become to some of the farmers, giving out their allowance. Very unfortunate circumstance. And it's been projected by analysts in international markets that if we are not careful, just last week we saw smuggling. People were being caught smuggling cocoa beans out of our country. And this is what have been seen. How much more those that have gone under darkness, meaning that we have to keep our eyes on one key commodity, cocoa, looking at the value chain, how the farmers are related, how citizens benefit, and how it contributes to our finance and revenue is very critical. Let's not forget state-owned enterprises, that mismanagement, the number of mismanaged state-owned enterprises, which were supposed to be profitable in themselves.
About ECG?
Possibly, they're one of them. How much, so-called, because I'm talking about ECG because government subverts some of ECG's funding. So this money is, which will be needed to build a school in the Tamale, to finance a classroom in the Western region. All these monies, if they were available, could be used to
now since we're talking about ECG, I think it's best we bring in transfers to the energy sector. Right? If government wants to keep the lights on, if they want to make sure that we have lights for the 24-hour economy to work, they need to have in their kitty 26 billion Ghana cedis to foot for the gap, the energy sector gap that we witness almost the time. Because what ECG collects, or what the energy sector collects versus what we consume, or what we need to keep it afloat, there's a big difference. And under the cash waterfall mechanism, that is a top-up role that, again, the finance ministry is supposed to play in that role. So we want you to join the conversation. I mean, what do you expect from the new finance minister, Dr. Kayode Atuforsen? You can call and share your thoughts, what you expect from him, looking at these numbers, especially energy is very key. If President Mahama wants to run the economy, he needs the lights to stay on, and definitely was one of the reasons why he went in his first ministerial appointment. It was the energy minister, the finance minister, the health minister, I think attorney general, and then there was another one. That tells you that he sees the energy sector and finance ministry to be very important.
So the numbers are below the screens. Just make sure you call into the show. We just take about 3 phone calls so you hear what you have to say, and make sure your comments are as objective as possible. Don't take insult. It's something we will not tolerate here on Beyond the Numbers. We already seen the number here, 26 billion. That is what we'll be saying to keep the power on, but the management of it will have to go to seeing the conversation the president himself had with the independent power producers.
It's a roadmap now, right?
Yeah, it's a roadmap now.
Of ECG, not the entire ECG. People get it wrong. It is a component of ECG.
Distribution.
I think the last bit of ECG, the president was very categorical, and that's what he's instructed the energy minister to do, to get people to get involved, to make sure that we do not have most of the losses that we encounter.
Exactly. Before we came on, we saw a message from some of the ECG staff saying they are going to oppose. Right? Yeah, they are going to oppose the whole privatization. But I think conversation have to go on, because if you look at nationalistic perspective, there's a lot of work that has to be done with ECG. Other than that, the key issue has to do with affordability. Power has become very expensive. From Ashantown, from the Beam Nations territory, we have Hamza, who is joining us as the first on the line. Hello, Hamza. Welcome to Beyond the Numbers.
Oh, thank you. Good evening. And thanks, JoyNews, for the good work you are doing. In fact, I really, when there's news in the media, I will have to confirm from JoyNews. If it's JoyNews report, then means it's authentic. So JoyNews are really doing well. And, I think it will be difficult, but if they manage the resources well, for the past 8 years, we've seen how the embezzle resources, where resources need to go, it doesn't. So I'm very sure that if we are able to manage the resources, the little work, actually, this debt, we had it before this time, and then we were just managing it. So we should manage our expenditure.
Okay.
That is why I will commend the president for the reduction of ministers.
Thank you.
Sometimes the CEOs.
Great. Hamza, we appreciate your time here on the show. We thank you for calling straight from the Beam Nation. President Shawa. So all our viewers on the Shawa, we give you a shout out here on Beyond the Numbers. So we open the phone lines to let you also call in. And like we said, make your comment brief and straight to the point. This is the big number. What do you think?
I think one of the four items that we are talking about.
Yes.
This one as well, goods and services, right? And you know that when you're talking about goods and services, you talk about running ministries. It's also very important, and running government agencies. So what we realized was that even the ministries, in 2024, it cost the country about 84 billion Ghana cedis to run all the ministries. That tells you that goods and services will play an important role, and Mahama has already done it. He's reduced the number of ministries. How will he affect this 12.8 billion Ghana cedis that we need to, purchase goods and services? I think we have another call, right?
Yeah. Mohammed from the Ahinkro.
The Mahinkro, right?
The Mahinkro, yes. Mohammed, you're live.
Yeah, yes, sir.
Go ahead, please.
In fact, JoyNews, I might say that you are doing a very good job. And we are happy for what is going on.
All right, thank you, Mohammed. Unfortunately, we couldn't continue. Call back and we'll view the final caller before we go, because we have just a few more minutes to wrap up the show. So the last caller will be the final caller, possibly. So this is a very big number.
Yeah.
Goods and services to run the nation, these are critical, especially let's talk about raw materials for some of the plans the government intends to institute to ensure the running of the ministries. First of all, the ministries and agencies have specialized programs, and these monies will definitely be needed to enforce and implement.
I think we have Collins from Offense. So, Collins, what do you expect from Dr. Casey Olatofosun as Finance Minister?
Yes. What I want to tell our minister is that now that he has identified the money that we can use to fill the gap, and then the solution has been emulated that we know people are using the energy and they are not paying for it. So my advice is that we should go to them and then force them to pay the money, so that we will not go in to collect any money from anywhere to come and replace whatever. We need to make things right. They are supposed to pay us. We should send them to court. They pay the money. We'll get enough funds to run the country. Yes, I think that is the advice I can give them. So they should work hard, even if it's soldiers that can go in there and know that you are illegally connecting the energy, you should pay. Then we take them to court. If we get the money, at least we can stop something.
All right.
And if our attitude are changed as a nation, I think it will help us a lot.
All right, thank you very much, Collins, for that intake there. So Collins is our final caller, bringing us a closure on today's edition of the Beyond the Numbers show here on the JoyNews channel. Collins has made us understand that a change of attitude is critical to ensure as a nation we walk in the path of development and sustainable growth.
Well, Winston, before we leave, let's leave you with this big number, 85.4%. What is it? This is what the IMF expect that we raise from tax revenue. It will be an interesting, year ahead, and definitely we know that with the support of the IMF, possibly Ghana will wade through these fiscal challenges. Thank you very much for, joining the show. My name is Isaac Kofi Agyei, and I always do this with
Winston Take will come your way same time next week. Enjoy the rest of our programs here on the JoyNews channel.